Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to It's Rainmaking Time. This is Kim Greenhouse. I cannot stress enough how important this particular segment of It's Rainmaking Time is. So many of us have no clue how delicate the grid is. What would happen in a disaster situation in the United States of America, or really anywhere in the world? For those of us who are living here, I want to introduce you to Cody Lundin. He's the author of When All Hell Breaks Loose, Stuff You Need to Survive When Disaster Strikes, 98.6, The Art of Keeping Your Ass Alive, How to Survive Fear, Panic, and the Biggest Outdoor Killers. Cody is the founder of Aboriginal Living Skills School, LLC, Adventures in Outdoor Survival, Primitive Living Skills, and Urban Preparedness. He's been on shows across the world in radio and television. He is also the co-host of a new show on the Discovery Channel called Dual Survival. I can think of nobody better to talk to about being prepared than the man who's here today. Ladies and gentlemen, give a warm welcome to Cody Lundin. Welcome to It's Rainmaking Time.
Hi, thanks for having me, Kim.
It's a pleasure and an honor. First of all, I cannot believe, after reading both books, how unprepared we are. We don't even have 10% of the necessary preparations done to be living in the true humility of the delicate nature we're living in cities.
Yeah, when I did some research, especially for the second book, When All Hell Breaks Loose, which is kind of more of an urban preparedness bent, which is more needed in my mind as far as the general mass populace, I found out a statistic from American Red Cross that about 6.5% of all Americans are quote-unquote prepared for a possible emergency scenario. So if you were a teacher in a class with 100 students and only 6.5 of them passed the test that you'd given them, you'd fire the teacher. So there's obviously something wrong with a country that basically was founded on self-reliance, as far as I'm concerned. And I don't know what that is, and I'm not into the psychoanalysis behind it per se, but what I am into is promoting good old-fashioned preparedness that I grew up around, with homesteading grandmas in South Dakota, and just common sense stuff that works when the bells and whistles of life stop ringing every once in a while.
Cody, don't you think that one of the great barriers, psychologically, mentally, to getting involved and really preparing is that, A, most of the population doesn't want to deal with it mentally. Like, we don't even want to put ourselves in the what if. That's number one. But number two, those that we have heard of that have prepared and are prepared, we make fun of them like they're in bunkers and they're scared and they're just reactive and they're fear-mongering. And therefore, we kind of write them off. We don't take them seriously. Do you know what I'm saying?
I totally know what you're saying. I mean, I get the brunt of that frequently. So yeah, the biggest aspect I would say is complacency, and we're all kind of guilty of that on lesser levels of whatever little aspects of our life. But as far as personal preparedness, I mean, the essence of the word self-reliant is just that. If you put another word in front of the word reliant, like city reliant or family reliant or state reliant, or federal government reliant, you get what you ask for. So yeah, there's a huge complacency as far as the general populace, because I think we're spoiled rotten for the most part. Now that is changing because of Katrina, because of the recession. We're realizing the house of cards sometimes comes down. And then there's the other aspect of people that before all these glitches start to happen with the stock market and inept leadership during times of crisis, etc., was, you get made fun of. And I have a thing in my second book about the ant and the grasshopper, that classic Aesop fable about, the ant's working away and hauling his stuff and preparing for the winter, and the grasshopper's just having a great time playing the fiddle or whatever he's doing. And there's a hell of a lot of grasshoppers, and especially in the United States of America, unfortunately. But I do think, and again, I'm on the inside scoop of this, that there's a lot more ants out there than you might think. And I think a lot of people are getting hip to this, unfortunately, through fear, which is a great motivator. But I do see a bunch of people that are actually looking for a lifestyle change. They're just getting tired of not being as free as they would like and wanting more self-reliance in their life and really enjoying that as a lifestyle, not just as a oh crap type of reactionary thing to whatever type of crisis may happen. But for those of us that haven't been into it from the beginning, as far as personal preparedness, it's hard because sometimes the people, quote unquote, making fun of you are loved ones. And those loved ones are going to be the same people that are on their knees in front of you saying, oh, okay, now what do we do? And so what do? You're not going to kick mom out of the house because she didn't go with your thing. Now, to be fair to the people that are making fun of other people, there's a paranoia factor that doesn't do anyone any good. And so there is that genre of people out there that take preparedness to a little bit higher level, so much so that they stop living their life. And I don't agree with that either. There needs to be a happy balance in all things. And the cool thing about being prepared with simple stuff is, you check the food reserves, whatever you think is important in your life, the excess water you have in storage tanks if you're like me, because I'm in the desert, and then you move on, because there's only so much you can do psychologically and physiologically without burning out regarding preparedness. So there is a balance, and I can see all sides of the court because I've been on all sides of the court, and I'm hammered 20 years in this business with all different aspects of thought. But I wish, if I had one wish right now talking to you, it would be that people would actively embrace being prepared and making their family safe and their neighborhood safe as a fun thing to do, as a thing in the 1930s or 40s, not including the Depression, but when my grandparents in South Dakota simply had a root cellar because it was what you did. They weren't paranoid. They weren't freaking out. They weren't doomsdayers. They were just regular people who realized, we better deal with our own stuff here, because when the blizzard does hit South Dakota, the farm down the street, they have their own problems, and they'll be there if we need them. But our responsibility as individuals in South Dakota in the wintertime is to be prepared, period.
I did a show some months ago with William Radowski, the president of the Meditech Corporation. The show was called Preparing the Grid, A Race Against Time. And I cannot tell you how vulnerable I learned that we are and the grid is, and how antiquated it is, and how, because we live in this bubble of electronic everything, we take so much for granted. And the reality is that this grid truly can go down at any time, and I had no idea. The other assumption that I had was that food would be available, when in fact, most of the suppliers of food in the stores only have 3 days stock. So those two things right there, and then the third thing is the issue of water. I mean, there's so much in your books. Your books really should be required reading for all children, all adults. Literally, we should all be tested on this. And that's how you prepare a civilization for a reality of things that go on. Ice ages, too much heat, tornadoes, and all these different natural phenomenon that happen. That to me seems like that's what humility would translate as, to really know it from the inside out. I'm serious. I really think this should be required reading, and it would take away some of that frightening X factor that happens in states of emergency where people freak out and they don't work together. Yeah. Talk about that.
Well, that's a huge aspect. I mean, survival situations are basically 90% psychology, and you hit the nail on the head. The person that is complacent, a very common reaction, or non-reaction in this case, to an emergency scenario is it ain't going to happen to me. That stuff only happens to other people. So when it finally does happen to that person, they say that, denial isn't just a river in Egypt. It hits even harder, because there's no